And then
Mhm.
the bigger work, and this is the hardest work of all, is in order for us to make these relationships work before we understood what they were, we had to really become subjugated into them. We had to play the narcissistic person's ground game, be what they wanted us to be, which means
Mhm.
taking back or even figuring out what your identity is in the first place is the really hard work of healing. And that's the tough part because we pretty much
Yeah.
had to silence ourselves to be in these relationships and figuring out,
Mhm.
who am I? What do I stand for? What am I about? That
Right.
can be some of the most difficult work. And doing that in safe spaces like therapy or with
Mhm.
other safe people, you realize that the narcissistic person actually doesn't deserve to see your authentic self, but that
Mhm.
is a part of you that can show up in sort of other places or through other pursuits, creative pursuits, all kinds of things. And then
Mhm.
slowly but surely, I have seen people do rather magnificent things once they really got this and go through these steps, but these are not easy steps.
Yeah.
And they're made all the more difficult. For example, if a person has a history of trauma, either
Right.
within the narcissistic relationship or not, it often
Mhm.
does mean trauma informed work to get themselves to a place of stabilization so they can
Right.
tolerate doing this kind of almost more higher order work. But
Right.
people get triggered quite often, and many people will say, there are permanent wounds from this relationship. And I say, yeah, there are. And you may trust less. I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think you need to forgive narcissistic people, the kind of harm they did, not necessarily. And so I think that people move into a very different kind of future, but a freer one. I mean, in some ways, you do have to live in dissonance. You have to recognize like
Yeah.
multiple things can be true at the same time. Like,
Right.
this is my mother. My mother, I'm making this one up. So, this is my
Yeah.
mother. My mother had a difficult childhood.
Mhm.
My mother was absolutely a terrible mother to us. She is selfish. She is cruel. She is sad. I feel sorry for her. All those things can be true
Right.
of someone at the same time. But the
Right.
core is that that mother may be harmful for someone. So they have to find a way to interact with that if they choose to interact with it that accounts for all the pieces. We sometimes want things to be so clear. This is my mother. I'm supposed to
Yeah.
love them. We can say it's okay to not love your mother. But I also
Yeah.
understand there might be cultural or other duty pulls, but then you
Right.
need to interact with this mother rather carefully.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's that delicate balance of
Mhm.
holding two things at the same time.
Yep,
And
yep.
we want to make things so binary. And, in this world, like you were saying, of social media and Instagrammable relationships, all we see is those two extremes, and mostly the extreme of the good. And
Yep.
so we all measure our
Mhm,
relationships according
mhm,
to that. So,
mhm,
it's very hard to be
mhm,
in that place of I can hold two things, two truths to be true
mhm.
at the same time.